The Galactic Union had handled many strange missions before, but nothing made them as uneasy as a message involving a Class 15 Deathworld. Even hearing that classification number made diplomats go silent and scientists shift uncomfortably in their seats. Class 15 was the highest danger category known, a level where the planet itself behaved like a living maze, changing, shifting, adapting, and constantly testing anything that dared to land on it. Most species refused to go near such places, and for good reason. So in contact with a research outpost on Vorth 15 suddenly vanished. Panic spread through the Union like a cold wind. The outpost had 60 trained specialists, all from tough worlds. Their communication logs showed they were experienced, prepared, and heavily equipped. Yet one morning, their signal went dark. Follow-up pings returned nothing but static. Emergency drones were sent, but every drone was destroyed within minutes by storms that didn't exist the day before. The Union Council gathered in a huge hall overlooking the stars. Representatives from at least 20 species sat in rows, whispering nervously. Their voices filled the room like buzzing insects. They all had the same thought, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Not another rescue team would not come back. That's how it always went with Deathworlds. Teams went in, and the planet erased them. Simple as that. The council debated for hours, suggesting ideas that grew slower and weaker with each passing moment. Some wanted to abandon the outpost completely. Some wanted to send more drones. Others wanted to try orbital scans again, even though the electromagnetic storms blocked everything. Then someone raised a possibility, one that instantly split the room into shock and disbelief. Why not send humans? A ripple of reactions went through the hall. One representative nearly dropped their tablet. Another let out a hiss of disagreement. Humans were different. Every species knew that. They came from a world that should have been classified as a death world, but humans called it Earth and lived on it like it was nothing special. Where other species developed defensive shells or natural armor, humans developed stubbornness, creativity, and something even stranger, humor. They laughed in terrifying situations. They joked while bleeding. They were unpredictable in a way the rest of the galaxy didn't fully understand, but there was no denying the truth. If anyone had a chance of surviving Vorth 15 long enough to find the missing outpost, it was humans. The human representative sat quietly until the council finally turned toward him. He didn't look nervous like the others. He only leaned back a little, thinking, as if deciding whether to accept a casual favor or a weekend hiking plan. He finally said, "We'll send a small team. Volunteers only." The hall reacted again. No one else in the galaxy used the word volunteer for Deathworld missions. Only humans would willingly sign up for something that terrifying. When the message reached Earth, the response was almost immediate. A handful of people stepped forward, not because they wanted glory, not because they wanted danger, but because another group of living beings might be alive and waiting for help. Humans had a habit of running toward crises when everyone else ran away. It was just something in their nature. The night before departure, the team gathered around their transport ship. The ship wasn't the biggest, not the newest, but it was tough. It had been reinforced with heavy plating, flexible shielding, and a communication system designed to survive storms that could tear apart metal. The engineers checked every bolt twice. The medical officer reviewed supplies again and again. The atmosphere was tense, but not hopeless. One of the volunteers made a light comment about the weather on Vorth 15, saying it probably wasn't any worse than some mountain storms back home. Someone else laughed softly, shaking their head. That tiny moment of humor settled the nerves of everyone around. Humans had this strange ability to calm themselves through jokes, and somehow it worked. As the ship prepared for takeoff, a Union official approached them. His hands shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. "I must remind you, he said gently. No team has ever returned from a Class 15 world. A human nodded simply. We're going to try anyway. Those 5 words carried something none of the other species fully understood: determination mixed with hope, tied together with a feeling that humans refuse to let others die alone. The ship lifted off, engines glowing softly against the dark sky. The Union watched from their station as the craft disappeared into the stars, becoming a small dot and nothing. The journey toward Vorth 15 began. The trip took several days. During the flight, the humans trained, ran simulations, and discussed possible conditions they might face. They reviewed maps showing mountain-sized vines, unstable ground, and weather patterns that made no sense. They knew the planet could shift its climate in minutes. They knew dangerous wildlife existed there. Still, none of them backed out. Inside the observation decks on the Union station, ambassadors and scientists monitored the ship's path with a mix of fear and fascination. They whispered among themselves, "Do humans understand how dangerous this is? They must know." Yet look at them. They act like it's just another assignment. No other species behaves like that. They're unsettling. As the human ship approached Vorth 15, the planet came into view, a swirling mass of dark clouds, glowing storms, and shifting landscapes. It looked angry, alive, breathing in a slow, heavy rhythm. Even from orbit, the ship shook slightly from the violent energy waves rising from the surface. One of the volunteers looked out the window and murmured, "Beautiful in a scary way." The descent began. The ship pushed through layers of atmosphere that seemed to fight back. Winds slammed into the hull. Lightning flashed bright enough to blind. The controls vibrated like they were trying to escape the pilot's hands. But through all of it, the humans stayed focused, adjusting controls with almost casual confidence. Finally, after a harsh but controlled landing, the ship touched down on the surface of VORATH-15 the instant they opened the hatch. The full force of the environment hit them. The air felt thick and heavy. The ground beneath them pulsed faintly, as if shifting under invisible waves. Strange plants reacted to movement. The temperature dropped sharply, then rose again within seconds. But the humans took it all in quietly. They scanned the area, checked their suits, and walked forward. A storm formed in the distance, glowing with colors no one had names for. A series of towering structures, trees, or something like trees, swayed as if watching the newcomers. The ground trembled just enough to unsettle most species. One human simply said, "Feels like we're being tested." Another replied, "Then we passed the test." The Union observers, watching through remote feeds, felt their hearts tighten. They had expected screams, panic, frantic calls for extraction. Instead, they heard calm voices, steady breathing, and footsteps moving forward with purpose. The planet roared in the distance, sending shockwaves through the valley. Dust rose in spiraling columns. A strange animal darted between the shadows, its form too quick to fully see. The humans paused, tracked it, assessed the risk, and then continued walking. The Union's hope began to shift into something else, something heavier, because as dangerous as Vorth 15 was, humans didn't look overwhelmed. They looked ready. And that realization made every observer silently question whether they had just sent the right team or the only team in the galaxy capable of standing on a world like this without falling apart. None of them knew yet was simple. The moment humanity spoke, the moment humanity joked, the moment humans stepped on that soil without fear, hope for understanding the limits of humanity quietly collapsed because humans didn't seem to have any. The first hour on Vorth 15 felt like stepping into another universe. The human team moved carefully, checking every direction, because the planet didn't behave like anything they had seen before. The air tasted metallic, like the atmosphere was still deciding what form it wanted to take. The ground felt uneven, not just because of rocks or soil, but because it kept shifting in tiny patterns, almost like breathing. Most species would have panicked the moment they stepped out of the ship. But the humans took their time, watching, listening, and trying to understand the rhythm of the place. One of them knelt down and pressed a gloved hand against the ground. The surface pulsed gently under their palm. "Feels like the world has a heartbeat," they said quietly. Another nodded. "Or like it's warning us." Despite the unsettling environment, they didn't turn back. They checked their gear, secured their packs, and started walking toward the direction of the missing outpost. They expected the journey to be unpredictable, but none of them knew how strange the planet truly was until they took their first few steps. The wind, which had been still moments before, suddenly changed direction. It blew from the east, then from the west, then stopped altogether. A faint glow shimmered in the sky, like the clouds were made of shifting metal. A low rumbling sound echoed in the distance, not loud enough to be dangerous, but deep enough to remind them that the planet was always awake. As they walked, their boots sank into a soft layer of dust that stuck to their soles like glue. Strange shapes moved within the dust, slipping away whenever someone looked directly at them. The humans exchanged glances, but they didn't break formation. One said softly, in a calm voice, "Okay, that's new." Another replied, "At least it's not trying to attack us." That small exchange made a few members chuckle under their breath. Even in the middle of tension, humans somehow found space for humor. It didn't make the danger disappear, but it made it easier to breathe. Back in orbit, Union observers watched the footage streaming from the humans' body cameras. The viewing hall was filled with gasps, murmurs, and anxious clicking sounds that different species made when stressed. Several ambassadors leaned close to the screens, their eyes wide with disbelief. How are they walking calmly? One whispered, "They should be running by now," said another. Any other species would already be calling for extraction. Yet the humans continued forward, stopping only to examine unusual plants or rocks along the way. They collected samples with curiosity instead of fear. A vine-like structure wrapped around a nearby tree and pulsed as the humans passed. Instead of stepping back, one of the humans lifted a scanner to take readings. "It's responding to movement," they said casually. "Interesting." The Union officials looked at each other in shock. Interesting was not a word anyone used while standing on a Class 15 Deathworld far ahead. Something large moved between the shadows of towering stone pillars. The team paused instantly, eyes narrowing, hearts steady. They didn't panic. They assessed. The movement was smooth and thoughtful, almost too controlled for an animal. Whatever it was, it watched them for a few seconds. Before sliding out of sight, the humans adjusted their grips on their equipment, but did not show fear. One of them whispered just loud enough for the others to hear, "It saw us first, and it decided to leave us alone," another answered. "Maybe that's a good sign." The team continued deeper into the valley. The temperature shifted again, dropping sharply. Their breath fogged inside their helmets. Ice crystals formed on nearby rocks, growing in odd patterns like someone had painted them with thin white brushes. Then, just as quickly as the temperature fell, the warmth returned. One human tapped the thermometer on their wrist device. "This planet can't make up its mind." "Neither can my old oven back home," someone said. "At least this one isn't trying to burn cookies." A soft laugh rippled through the group. The Union observers stared at the screen in complete confusion. Were humans joking on a world that had destroyed entire rescue teams? The observers found themselves feeling a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief that humans were steady. Fear that humans might actually be comfortable here. As the humans moved forward, a strong gust of wind suddenly swept across the valley, carrying a mix of dust and small glowing particles. The team quickly activated their face shields. The particles floated around them like shimmering fireflies, harmless but eerie. They clung to the suits, leaving a faint glow behind. One human brushed at them. "Looks like glitter." "Please don't say that," another groaned. "If it gets stuck in the ship, we'll never get rid of it." Even in crisis, humans still thought about everyday annoyances. The valley ahead narrowed into a tight path between tall rock walls. The walls weren't solid. They vibrated lightly, as if shifting from inside. The humans paused again. The path was narrow, but it was the only way to reach the coordinates of the lost outpost. "All right," someone said. "Let's move one at a time. If the ground changes, call it out." They walked in a single line, checking each step before putting weight down. The rock walls hummed quietly, almost like distant music. A strange, low-toned sound rolled through the area, vibrating through their suits. It wasn't threatening. It felt more like the planet was testing their presence, trying to understand them. Once they reached the end of the narrow path, the valley opened into a wide plain. From here, the dangers increased. Small shock waves rippled across the ground every few minutes, forcing them to steady their stance. Flashes of bright light flickered in the sky like silent lightning. The humans could feel the unpredictability all around, but they continued. A sudden electromagnetic pulse hit them without warning. Their screens flickered. Their communication devices crackled sharply. The Union observers panicked, thinking the humans were about to be cut off completely. But the humans steadied themselves, held onto their gear, and waited for the pulse to pass. When their systems rebooted, one of them said, "Okay." That was rude, and that was it. No shouting, no fear. Just annoyance, like the planet had bumped into their table during dinner. That moment alone made several Union scientists freeze in disbelief. One scientist whispered, "How do they stay so calm?" Another answered, "They're humans. They don't react like the rest of us." As the day went on, the humans cataloged more hazards, marked safe zones, and studied environmental patterns. They discovered that storms formed in rings around high ground. They noticed that the ground shifted more in areas with deep vegetation. They learned that some of the strange living structures followed heat signatures, but stopped moving once they realized the humans were non-hostile. Every discovery added to their confidence. As evening approached, the sky turned a deep purple with streaks of silver across the clouds. The humans set up a temporary camp in a sheltered area between two jagged stone formations. They activated heat shields, secured their equipment, and sat down to rest. Their shoulders were tired, their legs sore, but their spirits steady. One of them said, "Not as bad as I expected." Another replied, "Yeah, honestly, feels like we've trained for worse." Their quiet conversation reached the Union observers. The room fell silent. The shock was so strong that even those who could not understand human emotions felt something. Shift. The Union had sent the humans hoping they would survive long enough to send back information. But the humans didn't just survive. They adapted. They studied. They joked. They treated the Class 15 Deathworld as a challenge, not a threat. The observers exchanged uneasy looks. For the first time, they wondered if perhaps they had underestimated humanity. Not just their toughness, but their mindset, their ability to stay calm, their strange blend of curiosity and courage. The humans looked up at the strange sky, watching the color shift slowly. One of them murmured softly, "We're getting used to it." And that simple sentence carried a weight that none of the other species could fully understand. Because if humans could get used to a place like Vorath 15, then maybe no world in the galaxy could scare them. The next morning on Vorath 15, began with a silence that felt heavier than the night before. The sky above the human camp was a strange shade between silver and blue, and the air carried a low hum that vibrated through the ground. Anyone else would have taken that hum as a warning, but the humans treated it more like background noise. They stretched, checked their suits, and prepared for another long day. Their mission was simple on paper: travel deeper into the wild zone and try to make contact with the missing outpost. But nothing on this planet was simple. Every hour brought something new sounds, new weather, new movements hiding between shadows. Even so, the humans didn't lose focus. One of them stood at the edge of the camp, looking over the wide plain they needed to cross. Their boots sank slightly into the thick soil, which seemed to pulse like it was reacting to their weight. They took a slow breath, then said in a calm voice, "Another day. Another strange thing trying to confuse us." Someone behind them answered, "At least it's consistent with being inconsistent." The soft laugh that followed cut through the morning tension. That was the thing about humans. They didn't need everything to be safe or normal. They just needed each other, a plan, and the ability to make a joke at the worst possible moment. Somehow it helped. When they finally started walking, the ground changed again. The soil grew lighter, the color shifting from deep brown to pale gray. Thin lines traced across the surface like veins, glowing faintly under their boots. The humans slowed down, watching carefully. One of them tapped their boot lightly on the ground. The thin lines glowed brighter for a moment, then dimmed again. "Looks like it's reacting to pressure," they said, "kind of like those stepping tiles in old museums," someone answered. "Except this one probably won't play music. Hopefully not." The relaxed conversation didn't match the danger around them. But that was exactly what confused the Union observers watching from the station above the planet. The observation hall was full against scientists, diplomats, and commanders. Many hadn't slept, worried they would wake up to a disaster report. Instead, they woke up to humans making casual comments about glowing ground patterns. A Union scientist leaned closer to the screen. "Are they not scared? This is a Class 15 environment." Another replied, "They seem comfortable." Comfortable was not a word used in any Deathworld report. Before Dot, as the humans continued walking, a sudden gust of wind rolled across the plain. It wasn't strong enough to knock them over, but it carried a sharp whistle that echoed through the valley. The sky changed again, turning darker, almost as if clouds were forming lower than they should. Lightning flashed, not normal lightning, but bright horizontal streaks that ran across the clouds like cracks in glass. The humans paused and watched the phenomenon with steady eyes. "That's new," one of them said. "Looks like someone is scratching the sky. Let's hope it doesn't fall on us." They continued moving forward, checking their scanners every few steps. The readings were inconsistent. Temperatures shifted every few minutes. Electromagnetic patterns spiked in unpredictable waves. The planet was alive in a way no scientist had truly understood. Dot, as they approached the center of the plain, something unexpected happened. A loud voice came through the comms, one of the Union controllers sending a direct message. "Human team, do you need emergency extraction? Conditions appear unstable. We are detecting extreme environmental distortions." The humans exchanged glances. Then the team leader lifted their communicator. "It's rough," they said calmly, "but manageable." That one simple word, manageable, echoed through the entire Union observation hall. It was the kind of word someone used when talking about bad weather during a picnic or a messy office desk. No one used that word while walking through a place that could shift its climate in seconds and wipe out entire species. The silence in the observation hall was heavy. Diplomats stood up abruptly. "Manageable? Are they serious?" A scientist whispered, If this is manageable for humans, what isn't? That single moment changed everything. The Union officials had expected either fear or urgency from the humans. Instead, they received a casual reassurance from a species that treated danger like an inconvenience. Meanwhile, the humans on the ground kept walking. They reached the edge of a field where tall plants grew in uneven clusters. Each plant had long stems that waved slowly, even though there was no wind. The leaves were wide and shimmering, reflecting light like polished metal. The plants seemed alive in a different way, thinking, waiting, maybe even observing. One human approached carefully, scanning the nearest plant. The stem bent slightly toward them. "It's attracted to movement," they said quietly, but not aggressively. Another stepped close and extended a gloved hand without touching the plant. The leaves tilted in their direction, but did not make contact. "It's curious," someone murmured. The Union observers nearly shouted through the combs. But before they could send a warning, one human said, "Relax. We're not touching it." They walked around the field, not disturbing the plants. The stems followed them lazily, almost like a group of animals watching strangers pass by. The moment the humans were far enough, the plants returned to their original tilt dot. The team moved on. The ground ahead began to slope upward. A low rumble vibrated under their feet. They continued climbing until they reached the top of a ridge, and the view took their breath away. Below the ridge stretched a massive valley filled with swirling mist. The mist wasn't white. It changed colors with every second, shifting from pink to blue to green. Beneath the mist, dark shapes moved slowly, almost like gigantic shadows. One human whispered, "Wow." Another said, "That is beautiful." And it was. Terrifying, yes. Unpredictable, definitely. But beautiful in a way only a place untouched by civilization could be. They set up a quick scan at the ridge. The readings were strange, strong life signs, but none matched known species. Energy spikes came from underground. Atmospheric conditions shifted every minute. The valley was alive with movement and power. But the humans didn't turn back. While they observed the landscape, another message came through from the Union station. The voice sounded tense. "Human team, we request a status update. Are you still stable? Are you still capable of continuing?" The team leader answered again, with that same calm tone. "We're fine. Environmental hazards are unusual but manageable. Continuing toward outpost coordinates." The word manageable echoed through the hall again. Union officials exchanged looks of disbelief, confusion, and growing concern. Some even questioned whether the classification system needed updating. Maybe Class 15 wasn't the highest danger level. Maybe they needed a new category, something for humans specifically. Back on the ridge, the humans began to descend toward the valley. The ground shifted under their boots several times, but they adjusted quickly. They moved like people used to hiking through unpredictable terrain back on Earth. Their senses were sharp, their reactions precise. Halfway down the slope, the mist grew thicker. It rose around their legs first, then their waists. Strange lights blinked inside the fog, glowing like tiny floating orbs. They didn't attack or approach, just drifted gently. One human whispered, "Feels like walking through a dream or a science museum light show," someone said. "There." Steady voices filled the combs with a sense of control that soothed even the anxious Union observers watching from above. The humans slowed their pace, careful not to lose balance on the shifting slope. The deeper they went, the thicker the mist became. At the bottom of the valley, the ground hardened again. The mist thinned slightly, revealing more of the shapes they had seen from above. Large, dark forms moved in slow circles, too far to identify clearly. The humans paused, but didn't show fear. One of them simply said, "Let's take the long path around." They adjusted their route, walking around the area without disturbing anything inside the mist. Their journey took hours, but their determination didn't weaken. Eventually, as they climbed out of the valley, the mist behind them faded into the distance. The sky lightened. The vibrations under the ground softened. One human sighed in relief. That was intense. Another agreed. Yeah, but we handled it. Those calm words reached the Union observers again. And slowly, the realization settled in their minds like a heavy weight. If humans could walk through the worst parts of a Class 15 Deathworld and call it manageable, then humanity was far more dangerous and far more extraordinary than anyone had ever understood. The moment the humans stepped onto the surface of the Class 15 world, everything felt wrong. The air was heavier, almost pressing against the skin. The strange purple light of the planet's sun cast long shadows that seemed to move on their own. But despite the danger around them, the small human team kept walking forward with a steady confidence that none of the alien observers expected. They had arrived only hours ago, and already the planet had started to test them. Razor-thin vines curled along the ground like living traps. Tall trees that looked like spirals of bone swayed in a wind that no one could feel. The soil itself sometimes twitched, as if the planet were alive and annoyed by their presence. The alien researchers, watching from the safety of the overhead station, whispered among themselves. This planet had never been survived by any other species. Sending humans here was supposed to answer the biggest question the galaxy had about them. Were humans truly as resilient and unpredictable as the stories claimed? Or were they just reckless creatures who talked too loudly and laughed in the face of danger? As they watched from above, some of them expected the humans to panic. Others expected them to fight the moment things went wrong. But what none expected was the moment their hopes were crushed, the moment a human finally spoke. And everything changed. Earlier, when they first stepped into the clearing, one of the humans crouched near a strange plant. It was a small thing with a round body and needle-like petals that pulsed with a faint blue glow. The alien notes described it as extremely dangerous. Touching it usually led to paralysis within seconds. The alien observers held their breath. One wrong move could kill the human instantly, but the human didn't show a hint of fear. Instead, they poked the plant gently with the end of a stick, like someone testing a curious object found on the street. The plant recoiled, curling into itself. Another human walked over, looking more annoyed than scared. Why would anyone put a plant like this here? They said, brushing dirt off their hands. This place needs housekeeping. Words, human words. Simple, careless, almost playful. But to the aliens, it was the moment everything shattered. Humans joked, even on a death world, even when something dangerous could kill them. The aliens had assumed fear would guide them. They expected stress, panic, or at least seriousness. But this casual attitude toward danger was something none of their calculations had predicted. On the surface, the human team continued forward, scanning the area with their basic equipment. They weren't equipped with heavy weapons or advanced armor. They walked with light packs and even lighter concerns. Every alien watching felt their stomach twist with disbelief, or something close to fear. One human pointed at a distant ridge where strange creatures glowed like burning embers. The creatures had long legs and two sets of jaws that clicked loudly. They moved in groups, almost like hunters. The human observing them didn't raise a weapon. Instead, they narrowed their eyes and said, "They look kinda cute from far away." Cute. The creature was a Class 15 apex predator, something the aliens believed could tear through reinforced steel. And yet the humans described it as cute. Another researcher in the station shook their head and muttered, "This is why they scare the galaxy." The humans weren't careless. They were aware of the danger, but they saw danger the same way they saw everything else, something to understand, something to adapt to, something to overcome. And when they spoke with a kind of calm that didn't match the environment at all. The human team reached a narrow ravine where the ground split open like a cracked skull. The air inside it shimmered, giving off the effect of heat, despite the fact that the temperature around them was cold. The first human to approach tested the edge with a small rock, dropping it in and listening. Instead of the usual echo, there was a strange low growl from deep below. One of the humans sighed. Great, the planet is growling at us now. Again, they joked. The aliens watching didn't know whether to be impressed or horrified. Another human stepped forward, scanning the ravine. They spoke calmly, as if discussing a daily routine. We'll cross. Just take it slow. If the ground breaks, grab onto something. Simple, confident, ordinary human instruction. But nothing about this place was ordinary. The researchers observing them exchanged uneasy looks. They had come here expecting to record the limits of the human species. Instead, they were watching the limits of their understanding fall apart. The humans crossed the ravine with surprising ease, using nearby roots and stones like they had walked this world before. Every small movement showed the same thing. Humans didn't just survive danger, they adapted to it in real time. And every time they spoke, the aliens heard something unsettling in their tone. Not fear. Not excitement. Just normal conversation. As they walked deeper into the forest, strange bright insects circled them like floating sparks. The insects carried mild toxins that made other species dizzy or nauseous. The humans waved them away like harmless pests. One of them snorted and said, "Feels like being back home during summer." Again, the observers froze. Home. Summer. They were comparing a toxic swarm on a death world to warm evenings on Earth. One alien whispered, "Do they understand anything we consider dangerous?" Another answered softly, "They understand. They just don't respond the way anyone else does." The team eventually reached a massive stone structure half buried in the ground. Strange markings covered it, glowing faintly in deep red. It looked old, ancient enough to belong to a civilization long gone. The humans walked toward it with curious eyes. One touched the glowing wall, and instead of carefully analyzing it, they shook their hand. "It's warm. That's weird. But kinda cool." That was when the structure trembled. A deep rumble shook the ground. Dust filled the air. The markings brightened, as if waking from a long sleep. The aliens watching from above panicked. The structure was known to be unstable. They had hoped the humans would explore it, but not activate it. They prepared evacuation protocols, but the humans didn't run. One simply said, "Okay, so it's alive. That's fine. Let's see what it wants." The aliens stared at the screen, stunned. Humans talked to planets, machines, animals, anything. It was as if humans believed that everything, even a deadly object, had some kind of personality they could negotiate with. And sometimes, impossibly, it worked. The rumble faded. The glowing marks softened again. The structure stabilized, as if responding to the human voice. The researchers froze. One whispered, "How?" No other species could calm this structure simply by speaking. But humans had something no one else had, some strange ability to communicate with the unknown, not through technology or power, but through tone, emotion, and instinct. The humans continued examining the structure, moving slowly but without fear. They talked more as they worked, discussing theories, laughing occasionally, treating the entire situation with a balanced calm that made no sense on a world like this. Every word they spoke echoed through the station, reminding the observers of why humanity was both feared and admired. They didn't conquer death worlds. They made them listen. When the humans finally set up a small camp near the ruins, the alien researchers watched in silence. One of the humans stretched, looked around at the strange trees glowing softly in the dim light, and said, "Not a bad place. If the air smelled better, it'd be perfect." They were rating a Deathworld like it was a vacation spot. One alien whispered, "Their hope collapses everything we know. Every danger we list. They turn into something normal." But it wasn't hope. It was humanity. And the galaxy wasn't ready for it. Night on the Class 15 world was not like night on Earth. Darkness did not simply fall. It crept in slowly, like a living thing sliding across the sky. The purple sun dimmed, the ground shifted to darker shades, and strange lights flickered between the trees, as if the forest itself had begun to breathe differently. The humans working near the ancient structure looked around, aware that night here meant new dangers. But not a single one of them panicked. They set up their small camp with calm hands. They unpacked their gear, checked their tools, and prepared their lights. They behaved as if this deadly world was just another unfamiliar place they needed to adjust to. The alien observers watching from the station could not understand it. Every other species that had set foot on this planet refused to stay past sunset. Night meant certain death. Night meant creatures that no scanner could predict. Night meant the world became even more alive. Yet the humans sat around their little portable stove, heating water, talking, even laughing softly. They seemed more relaxed than worried. A group of glowing insects gathered above them, moving like floating embers. Another species would run or shield themselves. Instead, one human waved them away gently and muttered, "Please don't fall into the food. We have enough trouble already." The aliens stared at the screen in disbelief. One whispered, "They talk to everything." Another said quietly, "And everything listens." A low rumble spread through the ground. The sound came from the forest. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight, like something huge was moving far away. The humans paused, but didn't scramble for weapons. They listened. One of them stood and slowly looked around. "That direction," they said, pointing toward the darkest part of the forest. "Something's coming." The aliens expected fear. They expected defensive positions. They expected the humans to retreat toward the ancient structure for protection. But the humans didn't do any of that. They moved closer together, not out of fear, but out of quiet instinct. One checked the portable flare in their pack. Another turned up the brightness of the camp lights. A third simply stretched their arms, as if preparing for a morning run rather than a night encounter on a Deathworld. The rumble grew louder. The forest lights flickered. A cold breeze swept through the camp, carrying the scent of something metallic and strange. One alien researcher grabbed their recording pad. "This species has no survival sense," they muttered. But the alien next to them shook their head. "No, they have the strongest survival sense. They just don't freeze when danger comes." The first shape appeared between the trees, a large, shadowy figure, taller than a human, with glowing streaks along its sides. It moved slowly but purposefully, its heavy limbs pressing into the ground with a deep thud each time. The humans watched it with interest instead of terror. The creature emerged fully into the clearing. It had a long, wide face and bright eyes that shifted through different colors as it looked at them. It wasn't clearly hostile, but it wasn't friendly either. It was simply aware. The humans didn't point weapons. They didn't shout. One of them raised a hand, the way someone might greet a stray dog that wandered too close. "Hello there," they said softly. The alien observers froze. No one talked to a Class 15 predator. Not ever. Even approaching one was madness. But the humans didn't step back. They didn't show fear. Their breathing stayed normal. Their voices stayed calm. The creature inhaled deeply, releasing a soft vibration into the air. It was studying them just as the humans were studying it. One human slowly reached into their pack. not for a weapon, but for a small sensor device. They held it out, letting the creature sense it from a distance. Giving it time to understand they meant no harm. The creature stepped closer, not to attack, but to observe. Its glowing eyes softened to a dim gold. It sniffed the air and swayed its massive head gently from side to side. One human smiled slightly. "You're just curious," they whispered. "That's okay." The aliens watching couldn't even speak. They didn't understand how humans could remain so calm. They didn't understand how their voices stayed steady. A predator approached, and the humans spoke to it as if speaking to a nervous animal back home. The creature lowered its head, almost touching the ground near the human's boots. Every muscle in the alien observers tensed. But the humans didn't move. They allowed the creature to come close. They allowed it to smell them, to understand them. After what felt like a long time, the creature raised its head again and stepped back. It looked at them for a few more seconds, then quietly walked into the forest again, disappearing between the glowing trees. The humans exhaled, but not heavily. More like someone releasing a breath they didn't know they were holding. One of them whispered. It didn't seem angry. "Just checking us out." Another nodded. "Yeah, we're the weird ones here." The alien observers stared at each other. One finally said, "Do humans negotiate with predators?" Another answered in a quiet, uneasy voice, "They negotiate with everything." The night grew deeper. The sky darkened until only the glowing plants and insects lit the ground. The humans settled back around their stove and continued preparing their food as if what happened was normal. They talked about the creature, but calmly. They analyzed its movement, its posture, its eyes. They didn't judge it. They didn't label it evil. They didn't exaggerate its danger. They simply tried to understand it. The alien researchers wrote notes frantically. Everything the humans did went against every survival rule the galaxy had. But the humans were doing something different. They were connecting with the unknown instead of fighting it. After eating, they sat together, sharing stories from their journey. They talked quietly, their voices blending naturally with the sounds of the forest. Occasionally, strange lights appeared in the distance, but they didn't flinch. One human leaned back and said, "You know, this place isn't that bad. It's dangerous, sure, but it's beautiful in a strange way." Another chuckled softly. "You say that now. Wait until something tries to sit on your tent." The first one smirked. "Then I'll ask it politely to move." Their voices were soft, warm, human. In the middle of a death world, their laughter sounded out of place, but at the same time, perfectly right. The aliens watching felt the strangest emotion. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was something like respect, but mixed with something heavier. Humans were unpredictable. But more than that, humans refused to collapse, even in the worst environments. They didn't force themselves to be brave. They didn't pretend to be fearless. They simply accepted fear in a way that made it smaller. Later in the night, one human began scanning the ancient structure again. The glowing markings flickered softly, reacting to their presence. The human placed a hand gently on one of the symbols. "I think it responds to emotion," they murmured. "When we're calm, it stays calm." Another human stepped beside them. "So it listens to us?" "Maybe, or maybe it feels us." The structure glowed brighter for a moment. As if agreeing, the alien observers felt chills. The humans stayed awake for hours, watching the forest, researching the structure, speaking softly to one another. And each time they spoke, the planet seemed to react not violently, but curiously. The night passed without a single attack, without a single scream. Without a single moment of panic. When the purple sun began to rise, lighting the forest in faint pink streaks, the humans stood, stretched, and began preparing for the next day, One of them looked at the sun and said, "All right, new day. Let's see what else this place wants to teach us. Teach, not hurt. Not kill. Teach. The aliens watching felt their hearts drop. Everything they believed about humans collapsed even more. Humans didn't just survive danger, they transformed it. They walked through fear like it was nothing more than a shadow. And they spoke to the universe as if everything, plants, creatures, worlds, deserved to be heard. The morning on the Class 15 world began with a soft vibration through the ground. It wasn't dangerous, just the planet shifting as it always did, the way living things stretch when they wake up. The humans weren't alarmed. They simply stood, took a deep breath of the cold air, and began packing their gear. Their goal was clear now: find the missing Union outpost and bring back whoever was left. They had spent days crossing a world that had already defeated several alien rescue teams. But humans walked forward with calm footsteps, as if they could not imagine giving up. The forest around them hummed with gentle noises, and strange lights floated between twisted branches. It should have been terrifying. Yet somehow, the humans treated it like a place they were simply trying to understand. Ahead of them, the old path from the ancient structure stretched into a valley. The air grew colder as they moved, and the purple light from the sun filtered through the trees in thin beams. The deeper they walked, the more the forest changed. Plants grew larger, thicker. Roots rose out of the ground like walls. Dust hung in the air, glowing faintly in the sunlight. The aliens observing from the station above watched every step. They had given up trying to guess what the humans would do. Every time they expected panic, the humans remained steady. Every time they expected aggression, the humans responded with curiosity. The galaxy had many strong species, many intelligent species, but none behaved like this. When the humans reached the valley floor, the ground sloped downward sharply. A wide trench cut through the earth, created by some ancient disaster. The air carried a sharp metallic scent that made the humans pause. One of them crouched and touched the soil. "Something burned through here a long time ago," they said quietly. "Heat, maybe energy bursts." Another scanned the trench walls. Or something alive. Hard to tell. The aliens whispered nervously among themselves. These were the same markings found near other destroyed bases. They had always believed a giant predator caused it. But humans didn't jump to conclusions. They didn't run. They simply kept walking. As they followed the trench, a small blinking signal appeared on their scanner, a faint beacon, nearly out of power, lost under layers of soil. The humans exchanged short, hopeful looks. "That's Union tech," one of them said. "So the outpost must be close." They moved faster now, stepping over fallen roots and pushing aside thick branches. When the forest opened up, they finally saw it. The missing outpost. It stood half-buried under vines and cracked stone, its metal walls dented and scorched. The survival lights flickered weakly, barely holding on after so long. The entrance had been barricaded from inside. Deep claw marks covered the outer walls, but nothing had breached through. The aliens watching held their breath. The humans walked to the entrance and knocked on the metal door, not shouting, not kicking, not demanding. They knocked like guests visiting a home. Silence followed. They knocked again, softer. A faint voice came from inside. Who is there?" The humans smiled, relief washing over their faces. "Rescue team," one replied. "We came to take you home." The door moved slightly, as if hands on the other side were trembling. A small opening slid open, revealing a terrified pair of eyes. The survivor looked at the humans with disbelief. "You survived out there?" They whispered. "For days," one human said casually. "You did too. That means we can get you out." The survivor stared at them, stunned. For them, every hour had been a battle. Every minute, a prayer for the planet to ignore them. And here stood humans covered in dust, looking like they had simply walked through a large unfamiliar forest. After a moment, the survivor unlatched the locks, and the door opened. Inside the outpost, several more survivors lay on makeshift beds. They were weak, hungry, and exhausted, but alive. The humans moved quickly, handing out food, water, and small med kits. They comforted each person calmly, speaking in low, steady tones that made the cramped room feel safer. The aliens watching felt their eyes sting. These humans were not just strong. They were gentle in ways the Union had forgotten to respect. One survivor, barely able to sit up, asked, "How did you cross this world? How did you avoid all the dangers?" A human smiled softly. "We didn't avoid them. We just tried not to upset anything. This planet is unpredictable, but it isn't cruel. It reacts to fear. It reacts to aggression. We didn't give it those things." Another survivor shook their head slowly. "We thought no one would ever reach us. This place, it breaks you." A human lowered themselves to the survivor's level. "Then let us carry you the rest of the way. That's why we came." Once everyone was stable enough to move, the humans helped the survivors out of the outpost. The forest watched them. Lights flickered. Strange shapes shifted behind trees. But nothing attacked Dot was as if the planet itself had accepted their decision to leave. The journey back took hours. The survivors were weak, but the humans stayed beside them the entire time, adjusting their pace to whoever struggled the most. They cracked jokes, offered encouragement, and kept the atmosphere light to prevent fear from growing in the group. When they reached the clearing where their landing craft waited, one survivor broke into tears. "I didn't think I'd ever see a ship again," they whispered. The humans didn't clap or shout. They simply gave a warm smile and said, "You're safe now." As the ship rose through the thick clouds, the planet below looked almost peaceful. The survivors watched it through the windows, still trembling slightly. One whispered, "How did you stay calm?" A human answered gently, "We didn't come here to fight the planet. We came to find you." That makes things simpler. When the ship finally docked at the Union station above, an entire crowd of aliens waited, hoping, praying that the humans had succeeded. The doors opened, and when they saw the survivors stepping out, they cheered, some openly crying. Relief washed through the station like a wave, but the humans looked almost embarrassed by the attention. They told everyone to focus on the survivors, not on them. They offered support even to the medical teams, helping lift stretchers and comfort the frightened. The Union leaders approached with gratitude, but also fear. Not fear of harm, fear of what humans represented. A species that walked through the deadliest world and returned with calm smiles was not something the galaxy could easily understand. Later that day, the humans met with the Union Council to share their report. And the report was long, very long. 31 pages of notes, observations, and suggestions. But the council members were stunned by what they found in it. Most of the suggestions were simple things. Bring more snacks next time. Portable fans would help with the humidity. Heat-resistant boots recommended. Extra duct tape very useful. There were scientific notes too, but no dramatic warnings. No demands. No claims of superiority. The humans treated the Class 15 world like a difficult challenge, not a death sentence. One council member whispered, "They don't fear the world. The world fears them." Another added, "Or maybe the world respects them." After the meeting, as humans prepared their gear and discussed the next missions casually, the Union decided something quietly but firmly. Humans didn't just survive dangerous places. They transformed how others understood danger itself. Their calmness changed the atmosphere around them. Their empathy made even hostile creatures pause. Their curiosity turned fear into learning. And the council realized one truth. The galaxy had Undirs.